Hello, my name is Ellie Gomero, and today I'm going to be talking about the first two articles in Chapter 6 of the Rethinking Globalization textbook. The articles are entitled Stealing Nature's Harvest and We Will Reduce Your Field to Ashes, an open letter from Indian farmers. If I'm looking down occasionally, it's because I'm going to be quoting parts of the articles from the textbook. So, I feel in the United States, we don't often talk about where our grains and our food harvests come from. With the rise of veganism and vegetarianism, we've been talking more and more about the meat markets and the atrocities and the terrible things that are going on with those companies, but we are not often discussing the farming and grain imports and exports and what's going on with these farming companies. So these both of these articles are discussing cases in India, and I want to first read the beginning of the first article, and just to give a sense of how things start with this article. So, more than 3.5 million people starved to death in the Bengal famine of 1943. 20 million more were directly affected, and export of food grains continued in spite of the fact that people were going hungry. So, this immediately sets the scene for exactly what the problem is being discussed in the article, which is these large food corporations and trade corporations that are not looking out for the health and well-being of the communities that they are surrounding, along with the farmers and the people who are picking the grains that these corporations are producing. Now, to give some context, to give a little more context, a lot of the grains that are being discussed or that are being taken as property by these larger corporations are essential, are of huge religious significance to the cultures that they are taking these grains from. In India, the paddy or rice is an essential component of most religious festivals, and a lot of the other grains that are being claimed as property by these larger corporations also have a lot of historical significance to the people that it's being taken from. Now, there are 10 corporations that gained 32% of the commercial seed market. They gained control over this 32%, and it is valued at $23 billion. They also have control over 100% of the market for genetically engineered or transgenic seeds. What these corporations then began to do was they started to essentially destroy biodiversity by claiming things such as pollination by bees as theft and diverse plants are stealing sunshine. By making these claims, they were essentially gaining the power and the rights to mass produce these seeds and mass produce these products and destroy the ecosystem of the land that they were using. Along with this, in order to secure the patents on these life forms and these living plants, they had to claim them to be their inventions and hence their property. Now, this created a huge problem for the hundreds and thousands of farmers who were using and producing these grains way before these corporations came into power. And this continued to be a huge problem. The response to this problem we see in our second article, We Will Reduce Your Fields to Ashes, in which these farmers organized a protest with a blatant display of civil disobedience to burn the fields owned by these corporations, to burn the grains, to burn the fields, to hopefully, inevitably, plummet their stock market value and to take down these large corporations that were stealing from the people, that were neglecting their workers and their communities. Now, things like this don't just happen in India. They don't just happen in places that we are exporting or importing grains from. This has happened here in the United States plenty of times. And I want to mention an outside source, something that I feel not many people know about, and it's got kind of a silly name. It's called the Banana Massacre. I'm going to be including a link to a quick 2-minute clip from a larger documentary film that was created about this massacre. But this 2 minute video has a very wonderfully summed up explanation, but I'm going to try to do my best to also summarize it. Essentially, this banana corporation became the largest fruit corporation in the United States at the time, so much so that they had control of railways because they were in partnership with them. They started to control parts of the government. They held a lot of power and therefore were able to very easily exploit their workers. When people gathered to unionize and protest against this, to try to work for living wages and to protest for 6 day work weeks, they were shot and murdered in masses. Thousands of people were killed in these banana massacres, and it was never really discussed, talked about. History has kind of blatantly ignored it, smoothed over it, and not many people know that this happened, but this was during the Industrial Revolution, and it was very significant. If you want a if you're more of a reader, you don't really want to watch the whole documentary, or if the 2 minute clip got you interested, um, there's also a small retelling in the book 100 Years of Solitude. While this is a fictionalized piece of work, our author included one of his characters going through something very similar to what happened in the Banana Massacre. So if you look on pages 303 to 308, you can get a very point of view description of a very similar event to the real thing that happened. Um, so a lot of these injustices, a lot of these things that are happening or have happened throughout history are not being talked about, are not being covered, much. And it's because of this lack of coverage that it becomes harder and harder for these farmers to get justice and for these communities to be brought to justice. So, um, yeah, we hope to shed light through this chapter on some of the injustices taking place and some of the ways that these communities are being affected. I'm now going to pass the mic over to my classmate, my fellow group mate, for them to continue. Thank you.